think
I'd be curious about whether there needs to be a
Everybody,
change. Yeah. Yeah.
it's like called the meeting to order.
Because we would-
10:00 a.m.
Fraction. As far as part of the correspondence, we didn't get
Big
the,
word. There shouldn't be.
pardon me,
For recording.
pardon me.
First of all, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Saanich First Nations. Can we do a roll call? Okay, we'll start with David, go around the table.
David Ryder. And Sidney. Will be Peace Councillor District.
Good morning, everyone. Lord Newton, Councillor of the Central Saanich.
Carol Martin, Deputy Code Officer for District of Central Saanich.
Councillor O'Keeffe, Councillor Person. Jennifer Venice, Director of Central Center and Senior Services for the
And Charlene Broom, I'm North Saanich resident.
And I'm Lee York, I'm the Assistant Chairperson, filling in for David Willows today. I'm the representative of Sidney. This is my first time sharing, so I hope I don't set a record on points of order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Any comments or additions?
So yes, Chair, I was going to add in, under each other items, accessibility.
The AC then. Somebody, we need to remind me because I have no way of writing. Any others? Very nice, I take a motion for approval, please.
Second.
All in favor? Great. Approval of the minutes from the January 25th meeting. Circulated, any errors or omissions? All in favor? Carried. Item 5, accessibility plan. So there's a couple of grant applications. The two municipalities were asking us to support the discussion on Sidney's accessibility plan grant application.
I'll just say, I think it's this is the $25,000 that is allocated to all municipalities to do whatever they do, in terms of accessibility. So staff are proposing that they spend it on training, and I think that's a really good start. So I'm supporting that.
Have they identified any specific training or trainers?
No, oh, Sam, I can speak to that. Yeah, sure. So basically, we're following Central Saanich's lead on. I know that they've already undertaken some training and awareness for accessibility, and we're just going to follow up on that, as well as adding additional extra specific training for our communications and admin staff. So we're going to add that to our training as well.
So they go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I think again another good example of looking at what everybody else is doing at Central Saanich and then improving what they're doing.
Okay, they're asking for support. So we can get a motion to support training.
Can I just say that I like the idea that this $25,000 that each of the districts are looking at the training and education, because I think that's where we start on solidifying what we're doing.
Motion to recommend the grant application be supported by this group. Second by David. All in favor? Carried. North Saanich, oh, Gordon, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'll just, I'll speak to it now, but I just, with all communication clear, and I'm assuming that there's coordination between the three districts to ensure that there's not overlap and redundancy in what they're trying to go through the training and all this, so that the funds actually make that pool for the betterment of the accessibility component.
I think we discussed that briefly last meeting as well. There was general consensus that they shared back and forth. Anything from North Saanich's perspective you'd like to add?
No, we talked about it at our council meeting on Monday night, so. Yeah, that's very cool.
Thank you, through the chair. So we're also going to be collaborating with the town of Sidney and the district of Central Saanich, and working together. Our allocation, we've identified that we need some work on our website. And also in order to do that, we need to give staff the tools to be able to do that and to understand properly before we can implement anything that really has any meaning. So we're really excited, and we hope we get the support from the committee so that we can move forward and, as usual, work with our colleagues on the peninsula.
Any other discussion?
So it sounds like all the three municipalities are going to go through the same training, but tweak it a little bit for, whatever is kind of where they feel they need a little bit more support or. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's good.
Okay, to entertain a motion to support the grant application for North Saanich. Moved by David, second. Yeah. Batista. All in favor? Carried. Okay, I see our guest has arrived. Maybe this is a good time to slot her in.
Yeah.
Stephanie Jacobs from the Sandown Center has arrived online, and I thought that before we get into council referrals and the rest of the agenda, we slot her presentation now. So, welcome, Stephanie. You have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just trying to pull up my what I sent you all. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. We sent in a request for consideration just to provide feedback as the Sandown Center works to increase the accessibility of the site. We want to ensure increased access. We're beginning our youth programming in the next month, and we're building out raised beds and increasing the pathway, and we wanted to ensure that we're doing this in the best possible way to make sure that all children are able to enjoy gardening when they come to the site. We received some initial funding from a grant to increase our accessibility infrastructure, and I just wanted to make sure that we were in consultation with SPAAC as we move along in this process. So I submitted 2 questions to you regarding establishing our pathways and just, potential different mediums, gravel, things like that, to make sure that it was comfortable. And then also 2 options for raised beds, and just wondering if anyone had any experience or insight into how we could make the gardening infrastructure as accessible as possible.
I took a look at the drawings that you sent in. In my opinion, it would be a good idea if you could use a mix of both raised garden beds, the raised garden beds and the ones you can get under. If there are seniors that want to do it, the raised garden bed's great, but for somebody in a wheelchair, you want to be able to get under it. So I think in the planning, if you could do a combination of both, that would be helpful. The pathways, the gravel doesn't work for wheelchair. So you want to look at something that's a little more compact.
Okay, great. That's excellent feedback. Thank you.
David?
Sure, thank you. Stephanie, just from, I guess, a little bit of background experience, there's and it's not really a really current document, but one I could put you on to is called Barrier-Free Community Gardening, and it's in the Waterloo region of Ontario. And I went from kind of memory, but I think you get it online under end-to-end-center, all one.com. And it's an acceptable garden. They've done from what I saw at the time, they've done quite a bit of review in terms of the options for beds and so forth, and some of the issues regarding movement, idiosyncrasies of the various user groups and sensitivity to that. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. The concept now, as I understand it, is the wheelchair height of 24 inches, and then the a mix with 36-inch heights. And sometimes they create the beds on opposite sides. So if you have a bed rather than the U shape, a long bed, you can access from both sides. You can alternate the heights, and you can also interchange verticals using like 4x4. There's the grab bar, small grab bars on it to allow people up and down to get up and do the work and sit down. Sensitivity to auditory needs, visual needs. They even suggested, or whether this week, I recall some assigning locations so you can find, and the people can go there, they're not finding something you can't go in, it's designation of a specific location. With any signage or tactile needs, that kind of thing. That was important. The center bed option. Yeah, I think documents like that, there's been a fair amount of study done, and there's been some good examples of so it might be something that's of interest. I think it's worthwhile at least going through, and a lot of that information you probably have already seen, but there might be something new in there, and that's contacts as well.
That's great. Thank you so much.
In terms of, in terms of pathways, I would imagine that each of the municipalities could give them some advice on what's worked already in our areas, right? Especially in the Central Saanich, like active in that area in Sidney.
Yeah, I'm elated to see an application come forward on community garden and what's involved with that, and fully support incorporating this into our communities. So the Central Saanich Community Garden Association just completed theirs maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. And so you might want to reach out to them and see if they've sort of found after the fact any issues. Theirs is pretty compact as far as space. And so I would just want to ensure that the spacing between the beds is sufficient in order to ensure mobility around that. The other one that's quite interesting is the community garden that's in View Royal as well. And I'm not sure how much of an accessibility component they have to theirs. And so, yeah, I think certainly the individuals that have spoken already have provided more life experience insights than I can offer. My question, I guess, Chair, through you is, how did this get to SPAAC? Was this referred to a municipality, or did this just come from the organization?
Came from the organization, as far as I know. Directly, it must have gone through. You said. How do we get the communication? You go to Sidney first?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just, my question, I guess, would be to staff is, do these have to come through council first as referrals, or, because that was my understanding of how this sort of the communication and feedback process went. So it's around the process side of things.
Yeah, no, I had wondered about that as well, because I mean, I think it's good. I applaud them for it.
Absolutely.
But in terms of process, the way the terms of reference are set up is this is a municipal committee, and with the terms of reference, the council are the ones that have the authority to refer things to the committee, or the committee has the authority to make recommendations back to council. So I don't think it wasn't really set up for any community group to come and seek feedback. No.
Just, I can speak to that, in the terms of reference, sorry, I don't have it exactly right in front of me, but in there it says that the committee is a resource to other community stakeholders. And what they're asking for is for feedback, not an actual recommendation to go to our council. They're asking for the committee's feedback, which is one of the items under the objectives of the committee.
Great.
Okay, yeah, that's neat.
Did you have something else? to
Oh,
say?
yeah, no, I was just gonna say, in regards back to the community gardens, there is a community of practice with, throughout the province of community gardens. And for the last couple of years that I sat in on, and they gathered a number of best practices, and I believe there's something in there about accessibility. I was just scrolling through to see if I could find it, but I can't at this point. But when I get that, I'll forward that to you as well, because there seem to be some good recommendations in there.
Yeah, I just had a question. I just wondered, on the plan, and this is feedback that we received at our community garden at Green Glade, is there an area where there's a shaded area, a gathering place, for conversation, social, teaching, just thinking with, all ages with the garden area? That's something that's come forward at Green Glade for us, and I just wondered if there was something proposed.
Yes, so in the drawing that I provided, there's sort of like indication for a pathway leading into a central area in the center of the community garden. And that's the site that we'll be building out as a central gathering area. It already is a central gathering area. It's not shaded yet, but we're working on grant funding to build the infrastructure necessary to establish a shaded structure there. For right now, we just use the pop tents. And it's important to us that we create a pathway that is accessible to get into that central area as well.
And Stephanie, so, I think one of the community gardens in Saanich, they actually just started using, overall recycled asphalt. And so it's still permeable, but it's actually more DIY installable. And it's just recycled asphalt, one of those ways, and it still packs, but it's still a little more permeable, so it's not, not like a concrete. So, a little more on our surface.
Okay, thank you. I'll look into that. Thanks, Phil. Sorry.
Thanks for the submission and good luck with your project.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
So item 6, council referrals, is there anything there? No. Number 7, council updates. Start with North Saanich.
No, no, nothing that I'm aware of, other than our referral for support from the grant, unless Rachel's, probably or something else that I forgot.
I think you're on mute, Rachel.
There we go. Sorry. Sorry, everyone. It's nice to see you all. I just wanted to add that. I didn't say that earlier. I've missed you all. So I think we're really focusing on the communication side of things. I think we're a little bit behind on that. And I think that's going to be our biggest transition towards making things more accessible for not just North Saanich, but for the Peninsula. So I think that's where we're really looking for. We've also got the Parks Master Plan coming forward for finalization. So we already are fortunate enough to have the play structure at Jubilee Park. And then the Parks Master Plan is going to also be focusing on not just parks, but also trails as well within North Saanich.
For Central Saanich?
Sure, I've got a couple of quick things. It has been budget heavy the last couple of months, so there hasn't been a lot on this front. I will say that obviously that the website feedback is active and live on Central Saanich's website, so that's great to see. We just received grant funding over $400,000 for the phase 1 of the Lochside Trail connection that will go from basically Mount Newton down to Lochside and improve the connectivity as part of that entire trail network that will connect Lochside all the way up into Saanich and as a multi-use trail. The design process hasn't been implemented for that, but I'm sure that that would come to SPAAC for comment once that sort of reaches that phase. Right now, we're announcing in public facing the largest infrastructure project in Central Saanich is being begun with the pump station in Brentwood Bay that will hopefully provide services for many decades to come. And tied to that is again another grant application for trail connectivity through this project that will connect along Wallace from Brentwood Bay to Sellies and Wallace Drive, so almost all the way to Centennial Park, which will be great. As I said, budget, that's done, and that's we do have 2 applications that are in stream for large multifamily applications. One is actually at the corner of Mount Newton and Lochside as part of the sort of marigold lands. And then the other is a application that's looking at some land assembly on East Saanich Road in Bovey for a multifamily rental unit, as well as then tied into the Legion Manor for assisted senior living in there. So neither of those have come before council. They're in stream, they're accessible on the website as part of the development tracker notes. And again, there may be opportunity for staff to comment on something like that. But I think both of those projects are well in tune for accessibility needs already. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I saw, I guess it was a rendering, I saw the pathway proposed improvement there. It was great.
Yeah, we're super excited to see that finally come to fruition. There's lots of great things going on. So
I remember when my mother-in-law was at Saanich Hospital, and she was nervous about taking her wheelchair up that road, and this will certainly improve that.
yes.
It's great. Sidney.
Sure. So a few things. We did our we staff does for us a review of outstanding items. About that on Monday, and a number of accessible things. So I'll just kind of run through where they are with those things. So we had council had brought forward to staff the task to increase the accessible parking spaces near the bandshell. So they are working on that. We council approved a budget item in regards to having a parking standard for accessible spaces. So this will be part of that. So they expect that to get some progress on that later this year. Also in progress is the issue of accessible parking issues at the park and other public accessible parking spaces within Sidney. So I would hope that is in progress, but not a specific timeline on that. You may recall that we asked council to review their emergency plans and incorporate the needs of persons with disabilities into that plan. So there is a budget item that was approved for that, and staff will work with the consultants on what will probably be a phased-in approach over the next couple of years. There were some items in the downtown parking study related to accessibility, and they expect to be working on that this year as well. What else? Parks Master Plan that council has asked staff to consult with SPAAC on that for review and consultation on accessibility aspects. Staff are still working on that. They haven't sorted out a timeline yet, but that's something that you can expect to see in the near future, hopefully. Other things, the Cedarwood development. So when the Cedarwood Hotel, that was approved. So that's exciting. So that'll be about 100 units split between condos and townhouses. In Sydney, we have a requirement that 20% of units in multifamily dwellings have to be adaptable. And so what we figured out with that was we ended up putting most of the adaptable units in the condos and several townhouses as well, thanks to input from Charlene. So Charlene had attended the developer's presentation and had made some comments. And I don't know if you want to comment further.
Sure, I'm very excited about the Cedarwood. The developer has been absolutely wonderful in being receptive to suggestions. They were going to put all their adaptable units in the condo buildings. That's like a 1 bedroom apartment, and I pushed him as to why he wouldn't think about doing some of the townhouses adaptable as well. And he was so open and willing to, and within 2 weeks he had plans back to me on how that came up. And he said it never occurred to him. Like I said, you've got families with disabled children or disabled parents with children, like they need the same options for housing as everybody else has, because or whether you just want family or happy to come to the house. So to open up more options for adaptable and accessible units instead of just like people with disabilities or maybe one that. So he was extremely perceptive in saying that never occurred to him. And the architect dropped some plans within a couple of weeks that they sent to me. I've got my name on the list for possible, you know, as an IH and maybe Canada Collide or whatever. Maybe then there's a place that I can live closer to Sydney that might work. So when you're talking about these other developments coming into, sometimes they think they cover accessibility issues or whatever, and sometimes they get in a problem and talk to somebody who's really doing it. So I'm thrilled with how receptive they've been to looking at things. You know, we're never going to get absolutely everything we want, but boy, being receptive like that is a good change.
That is very good.
Yeah.
Also, wasn't there some discussion about the EV charging stations?
Yeah, so that's, so what's happened is the provincial government is, moving forward a plan to put EV charging stations all over the province. So they came to Sidney and they want to put in 16 charging stations. So which council, and those will be on the Mary Louise parking lot. The town leases part of that parking lot from Mary Louise for employee parking. So the plan is, I think they're starting with 13 spaces, but council did make a motion back in January, I believe, that will be referred to SPAAC for review and design. So I'm not sure when that's coming, but you know, one of the things they had to do first is they had to negotiate with the Mary Louise Center to allow us to sublease those two hydros. So they're kind of working on that. And then once they get working on the design aspect of the EV charging station, then they will bring that to staff on it.
Just as an update, the action I expected from that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Mr. O'Keeffe.
No, I don't know.
No, you. I thought you were pointing. Go ahead.
Thanks, just around the adaptable units and the willingness of the developers to look at that. Do you have any idea when we're talking about sort of that balance of affordability versus accessibility and what the additional costs would be? I understand that retrofitting is much more, but upfront when we're looking at costs, was that ever discussed with either of you?
They didn't discuss cost to me at that time, but that is a barrier. Like you can put all the adaptable units you want in, but then if I have to go and buy and put that $100,000 into adapting that unit, cost is a barrier sometimes to being able to do it. I would love to see a developer come in and say, we're putting in $1 So that is a barrier to some people being able to, or to make an adaptation. I don't know right now what the cost would be. When my house was built, it was built for me, so why would we have that?
So just, so developers, and I've talked to you on that, is it wasn't significant cost, you know, as long as they know upfront that this is what they're gonna have to do. We really, Sidney has had that in place, I think, for at least 10 years, I think, and there's been no squawking about it, no pushback on it at all. You know, it would be nice if some of them are fully accessible, because all the, with the adaptable units, it just means that they can be, they're kind of wired in for certain things, so they make accommodation for an elevator shaft to be put in, but they don't put an elevator in. You know, they have the wider doorways, and that's really okay. But the other thing is, it might kind of be a moot point anyways, because the new building code that's coming in, is that this year?
It's supposed to be effective March 1st.
Yeah, I think it's already here, so.
It's already effective.
So, but yeah, I know that, but I don't know if the accessibility factor was affected this year or next year. But in any case, it's my recollection is that all the units will have to be adaptable, I believe, or at least you know, wide doorways, wide hallways. I don't know, David, you're kind of more of an expert on that stuff. If you've heard anything.
It's an ongoing problem, obviously, it costs more to actually have it look at that. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, families would require that can't afford initially purchase as adapted. The little loan come in if it could, to make the modification, and no other support for them to do it. So it's conundrum this always has. It's exacerbated by all the costs and time to do these things now. And quite frankly, in fairness to the builders, the developers, they have to be able to cover certain costs, and they're paying increased costs as well. So it's a real catch-22. They have to recoup their costs. They have to have a demand to do it that will, in the end, provide somebody that watch the kid. One way or the other, they either pay up front or they do it and they will recoup it and be able to get financing for it. So there isn't really an ideal solution out there unless there's an organization or government to do it.
One thing that in regard to thinking of the rentals that you're proposing that might come forward, and it's something that I was thinking about for us as well, because there's a proposal on the corner of the highway here for 140 rental units. So they'll put in 20% adaptable. But the thing is, people who rent can't, even if they have the financial resources to make it fully accessible, it's a rental unit, they don't own it. And so, you know, they can't make major modifications. And so I talked to the developer about that and said, you know, could you designate a few that are fully, could you just build them from the get-go accessible? And he said, you could do that. It wouldn't cost them a huge amount more money. But his concern is if they're accessible, you know, like lower countertops and other sorts of things, then it kind of limits who they would be able to rent them to. And so the one thing I thought I had proposed to them, we hadn't followed up on further, was talking to BC Housing to find out how many people do you have on your wait list that are looking for accessible spaces. And so that there might be an arrangement where, based on what is on the BC Housing wait list for people who need fully accessible units, maybe they could kind of, you know, factor that in and say, okay, well, it looks like there's this amount of demand, and if we designate, I don't know, 3 of those units for fully accessible and come up with an agreement with BC Housing to fill those for us if they become big enough. I don't know, so maybe there's something in there that
on that, that has been a source of solutions in other jurisdictions. Where when the developments come along with the organization, not necessarily municipality, but could be any organization where involved in a commitment during that portion to say, we will agree to look after, to make sure that someone or this cost or has been covered with the rental of X number of units. And we have people that will move in, we feel comfortable doing that. And if they move out and do other things, we'll have others coming forward for that. Well, that allows it to be built, and that allows it to be built, and it really should be for people. So the rental component actually is in some instances a better opportunity to provide fully accessible spaces in the purchase. Or in common.
If I may, I think as we're looking at trying to find that transition, and you know, hit the nail on the head, it's, you know, people living and aging in place in their communities to have those units available. And I think we talked about trying to find an inventory of them, something at one point as well, as part of this commission, and so I think there's opportunity, but there's still lots of work that still obviously needs to be done.
Something, and this kind of goes back to the emergency preparedness and services as well. If the park went up on fire, I have to evacuate my house, my partner where it was. Because I use zero lifts for my class, right? There aren't any hotels that provide. So if I had to evacuate my house, I would have to depend on people that could manually, that could physically move me, which again is a hardship on anybody because you don't want any injury themselves. So if there were rental units, even that you could rent for a certain amount of time in an emergency services or whatever. So to me, having something available is not, and I do know of people that their houses have burnt down and they've got nowhere to go with other pages. They've had to stay in a hospital situation because there's no nurse for them to stay. So to me, if there's a way to encourage that, again, through rental units, wheelchair accessible places, not only are they available, but they're also there for emergency situations and so on.
That issue?
Our seniors housing navigator is doing similar, where she's creating agreements with different people that are building seniors housing, that when they're built, we can, you know, have so many units that we can give to seniors that are state housed on the alternative housed. So that's something that we're doing, and it's been coming along.
So that could be the organization.
So Shoal is going to have a housing.
Shoal has a seniors housing navigator.
Okay.
So there's certain amount of homeless people in Sidney. So she mostly works on the Peninsula, and homeless and precariously housed seniors. And people that maybe just need help with filling out application forms and things like that.
So would Shoal maintain a wait list then of, say, seniors who are looking for low cost housing? Okay. So say, for example, Central or municipalities said part of our approving this project will be that there shall be 5 fully accessible units. And that we would have maybe a covenant on the property for that we could say sure, you know, could help fill those units. Okay.
So our list isn't necessarily disability, it's more
Okay. Well, seniors.
right?
Okay. Right. Okay. Good to know.
But something similar. People having those MOUs in place, people that are looking. Properties right now,
I think it's also a matter of just continuing to create that awareness that there is a demand, right, for these types of buildings, and so. There's such a vacuum of space for this that I don't see any issues with them being utilized or not being rentable at all. And so if we're just able to capture a bit broader spectrum of people that require housing, especially in the rental market, we all know how precarious that is to be, but regardless of your situation. So,
I wonder if we should liaise with Disability Association of BC, for some advice on that or some existing relationships.
So, I don't know if I talked about this last year, but there's an organization called Right Steps, and it's and it was funded provincially as a pilot project. And part of it was to address this issue that there's not enough acceptable housing for people. So the first thing that they did is they took inventory of trying to find out from the municipalities, okay, where do we have adaptable or accessible housing? And so they had a list of that. They encouraged municipalities to start encourage building more. And they now provide sort of a matching service. So they maintain an inventory of accessible units and a wait list of people who need it, and they kind of match them up. And part of that also includes, so if there's a person with a disability that is looking for an accessible unit, they actually get a consultation with this organization to find out, well, what are your limitations and needs, and are you in a wheelchair, or are you a deaf person, or blind? What is it? And so what kind of accommodation can you get? So there's that individual assessment as well. And so I had talked to them about, is that program going to be brought to the province? And they were hoping they were submitting an application to the provincial government, so it could be extended. And I said, well, if you extend it, this would be a good area on the island to hire it, because we already have a accessibility committee. Some of our municipalities are already requiring 20% of units. This would be a good place to expand that, but I haven't heard from them lately. So maybe that's it. We're probably waiting for them. Yeah. But yeah, so maybe we'll get back to them and find out where that's at. And if it's not, maybe maybe it's something we could spend some more time.
Okay, the tracking sheet was distributed. I noticed that the things that are missing from November were on there. So it's good. Any other issues from the tracking sheet? I don't think there's any interest for anyway. Next item is the Victoria Airport's Public Accessibility Forum. Is April 17th, is that probably? And if you're looking for one or more members of the SPAAC committee to join the forum on the 17th. I'm away, unfortunately, on vacation out of the country, so I'm going to be able to come through.
I don't talk to them.
I wonder if we need any information ahead of time too, about what the forum's going to take. Like, is it going to be?
But what I could tell by what I read on the news is that it's a Zoom meeting. Yeah, so, I'm sorry, so I'm assuming I will interview and that would be that they let us know what's required from the state.
Right, just registering probably to the city info.
Yeah.
David?
I'd be interested. I think I've had some experience with that. I unfortunately have a commitment for the 17th the groups that we could do my best with that change.
I think that'd be fabulous if you did. I've had lots of experience with my, a little bit of experience with my wheelchair being damaged in airports, but. Yeah. There you go. Yes.
So yes, so I'll advise the airport authority that sure communicated with people to attend and if they can contact you and it's back on.
That's great.
Okay, great.
And I'll let you know if I. Sure.
Yeah, we had, additional item 8C. Referring to disability awareness week.
Yeah, so I just was wanting to remind the municipalities about this. We only meet every 2 months, so I thought it'd be good to give notice now. So I was just gonna make the motion back to our municipalities that SPAAC recommends that the municipalities support National Accessibility Week, May 26th to June 1st, by using its communications to promote awareness of accessibility and awareness of Accessibility Day at the Shoal Center on Saturday, June 1st.
Great.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that, so Panorama, participates in that week, and we put together some activities during the week. I sent it off to vice chair and chair just to get their input on it.
Yeah, I said something back. Sorry, I should have got a second.
Oh, okay.
Second. Sorry. Discussion. Did you get anything back from David?
Yeah, no, nothing, he just said it looked good, so we have we're actually gonna do quite a strong social media campaign. And we've set up free drop-in activities throughout the week, for swimming, weight room, and fitness. And that's, that part is to kind of reduce the financial barriers for participants. We have, we just have just a huge campaign through that whole particular week. We're gonna have lots of programs and services, working with some community groups and partners. So yeah, we take part pretty much. So yeah.
There was someone who kind of remember that's on the committee for accessibility for our friend. Right. Do you think we have somebody who would be interested in doing that?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
So just a question. So in regards to the referral that you made, was that just to the chairs or was that meant to come to the committee?
I think I sent it to both David and yourself. And then just to say, here's what we're planning, just to kind of see what kind of conversation would occur at this table. And I did get some feedback from yourself, right, on David said it just looked good. So I don't know if there was an intention to bring it back here. I just reached
Probably
out.
should have a retrospect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in terms of process, I think that normally just with the staff team provides if somebody on the committee or an organization wants feedback, I guess it would go to the chair to first, but then I would think that the chair would then, make sure that that's on the agenda so that the value of the committee is, the chair and the co-chair have some information, but I think the value of the committee is that there's other members with other sort of perspectives that could.
I guess I assumed that would happen, but obviously didn't.
Okay. So staff, I guess I'm wondering, how do we ensure, is that just making sure that the chair understands the process in terms of when things come forward to them that they should kind of be keeping you in the loop to make sure that things. Okay.
Yeah, just like when we ask for agenda items, anything you want to report, we look at.
That was-
add into the-
Yeah, that was a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, okay, okay.
I think too, the value of having this particular committee know, that's and that's why I sent it out, just to really get, you know, because we're in the planning stages and say, here's what we're planning.
Is it too late for me to fan it out now? So I have the information.
Not at all, you know.
I'll do it like it.
I mean, I'm wondering if, when things go to the chair for possible agenda items, is it a good idea to CC staff on that, just so that because maybe David at the time thought, oh, staff will already know about this somehow, or okay.
Good idea.
So maybe can we put something about that in the minutes, that individuals requesting items on the agenda should go to the chair, but CC to staff? Is that?
Well, when you do and it sends out an email to everyone, just like they want any.
Oh,
it's on the
okay.
agenda, that's the opportunity to bring it up.
Okay, sure.
I think too, with your motion of communication, with getting the word out about the activity or the access awareness week. With the events that we have planned and the day that we have planned, it'll be really good to share communication. I would love to get some information about what you're doing in our newsletter. Get that out and some access awareness. Yeah.
And I was just in terms of, just maybe suggestions for staff on things that they could, you know, in terms of raising awareness. All the suggestions to include information on panorama event as well. Also, perhaps, it might be an opportunity to remind people about our online accessibility feedback form. Might also be an opportunity to convey to the community some of the things we are doing in our communities in regards to accessibility. Some of the things that we're moving forward within our accessibility plan, just to let people know that what's happening there. You know, I don't know if anybody else have ideas on things that staff might want to incorporate in the communications.
I think it's important that we also do a little bit of bragging.
Yeah.
In our municipalities and recreation. I think this is an opportunity to highlight what we have done, what the city and the municipalities have done as far as accessibility. I think, you know, we will need to feedback or how do we make it better, but I think we need to have ourselves on that. Important to someone that everybody knows that our making some progress and let's walk that.
I just a comment too, and one of the pieces which I think is really good is that when the commission passed the strategic plan, one of the pillars, there's 4 of them, but it's on accessible programs and services. So that guides staff to ensure that when we do our work, that we have looked at that piece. And it's a guiding value for staff and the commission. So it is one of our strategic directions.
So I think we have a motion on the floor to recommend that to municipalities.
Yeah.
So this time we should call the vote. All in favor? It's approved. Thank you.
And Anna, will you include some of those suggestions that came up as part of the discussion, just for staff's consider? Yeah.
There'll probably be, some other municipalities and organizations developing plans for the May 6th to June 2nd timeframe. And so you can ad hoc sort of look for those on the internet. I'm sure there'll be some guiding advice there too.
Sure, just, and this is where I always get a little confused about sort of the process. So when we have this recommendation for this. How does that get reported back to the various councils? Sort of follow up from that, is it still up to the liaisons, or is there a mechanism in place for that to happen?
Well, I've communicated with the corporate officers, and so what we do in Sidney is these minutes for SPAAC will go on a council agenda, and any recommendations from this committee are dealt with at that time.
Right.
Central Saanich, I think it's similar, North Saanich, you guys kind of bring it differently to a council liaison report, but that's how we do it. We put the minutes on the agenda and we highlight any of those recommendations, and that's when council considers them. So the corporate officers and I, we hear the minutes, 20-year council, 20-year council.
So then to follow up on that, that would become as part of the committee, sort of part of the agenda, of various committees, so it would be a recommendation that would be sort of inserted into that part of the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah, and that's how we do it, and so when the SPAAC minutes are on, then as a liaison, I usually give overview, okay, here's the SPAAC, I like to take the minutes, and then the recommendation. That's not it.
Shirley?
They'll host more Saturday.
Rachel smacked me. And I
So
said,
you say them.
I'll do a liaison report.
Can
Yeah,
I
I'll
send
highlight.
them?
Yeah, please. And then everybody smacks me for the thing.
Just.
Yeah, so yeah, I'll do a liaison report like for this meeting where I'll write my notes in the liaison report, the council sees it, and then I'll do a notice of motion to put it on the table to direct staff to do something, but that notice of motion, Rachel will. She'll just be like, hey, well, don't forget to do this.
I haven't been getting much notification on that, so if you just give me an exact, because I could be at that meeting too, so for,
Yeah, the last one.
yeah, yeah. So thanks.
40 minutes, I should be 10 seconds. Sorry, hold on.
So I think we're on to item 9 of the feedback. It's pleased to see that Central Saanich only has the website working now, but they actually have some activity. Great.
Sure. I'll take that as an invitation then, Chair, to speak to it. Yeah, I've reached out to just follow up on the individual's behalf, and I only did it 2 days ago, so I haven't heard back from staff about that. And again, curious just about sort of how the intersection between communications and bylaws and follow through will work. So I don't have anything to report on that as far as action other than what is reported in the report from the bylaw officer.
Looks like David was busy.
The good news is there's not much snowpack this year.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and yeah, that was a comment, and I think it's something that we'll review sort of after the budget cycle and everything and determine that. And Britt, the communications director, I think she did a good job. It's sort of relaying the policy, and clearly we have work to do, but we can't do everything, unfortunately. But I think there is issues around sort of connectivity and being able to navigate when we have some of that's, and it's not just people with accessibility challenges, it's across the municipality. So
I would say as a disabled person, that I hadn't realized before I became disabled. But when there's a snow event, you really are shut in for a week or more. You know, so there's no for a while. Most of the neighbors don't actually clear their sidewalk, even seeing enforcement. So it really is debilitating. Stuck in the winter inside their house, not able to go anywhere. So you know, my wife can go out and get groceries, but I'm basically saving the Russian soap office. It's important to follow up on it.
I appreciate the feedback in that area as well. So it is awesome.
Okay,
I, along with David Rose, I've sent some feedback forms that for Sidney as well. I have to be the one to reach out, finding out what follow-up is on that. Like, I don't necessarily get it, and even still the one that I filed the year ago May. Still not the one. And I have just given them. So, so again, you don't want to, you get tired of it. You really do.
So this is a good discussion point, I think, because I was gonna ask for, what's the process in Central Saanich for, okay, person submits or complaint about, something, and then bylaw, deals with it. And then if it doesn't get addressed, like, how does that get closed? And, when we talked about what the process would be in terms of, should these sort of things come to the committee? I think we decided no, because the routine things that staff should really be, their operational staff should be dealing. However, if we saw a particular trend, and that's why it was good to have these things come to staff, just as an information item. So if we saw a trend, things keep, same things keep happening, they're not being addressed, then perhaps that might make some other sort of recommendation or. So I don't know if my colleagues have thoughts on what do you think should be our process in terms of if for staff to, thank you.
I think we need to be careful with some things. Some things are bylaw enforcement related and some things are more policy related.
Yes.
So it depends on the specific issue.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about parking, it's covered under the parking bylaw.
Yeah.
Then that's handled through our bylaw. Yeah. If you want to change something within the parking bylaw, that's something that needs to be done through council.
Yeah.
And the committee.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. But what I'm speaking about is, citizens not being responded to. And so if Charlene has sent something in a year ago that still hasn't been responded to, and it's unfortunate to hear that, others are giving up on it. So
I think it's important that they communicate to the town employee, like the bylaw department, and following up, or Adam's just brought it up, and she has.
So I did,
our bylaw enforcement officer.
I did get a response, but it hasn't been rectified. So I did get a response, she had a response saying, yes, we look at this, we do this, we do this. And I emailed back and forth, but on that a couple of times, yeah. And he said, oh yeah, we know about it, he's just waiting for a sign. I said, "Talk a lot." So how many times do I have to, that's still not done. That's still not done.
Then you could contact them again and we could further, but I mean, again, we have to look at our staff resources and, if he says it's gonna be done, it's just a matter of time. I mean, that's something that you need to talk. You need to get involved in.
well, and I guess the other option is also, forwarding it to council. I guess if somebody after who hasn't received something, maybe that's an option as well, but
So again, like I said, where my frustration comes in is, I'm somebody who kind of has gotten to know this space for somebody that doesn't. And you get the response, okay, that's part of this bylaw, yeah, we'll look into it. And you don't know that, okay, how far do I take this, how many times do I have to address this same particular issue? And as a citizen, really, it takes over a year to deal with it. So it is frustrating. Let's say, as everybody who's around here is well aware, parking is my biggest issue, it's my biggest headache with anything. So when I'm seeing the bylaws are not being followed or enforced, it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I guess it's just an observation of the conundrum that Gordon alluded to, the myriad of things that come up, and budget constraints and manpower constraints and various sundry priorities and so on. The other issue being bylaws have changed. Some bylaws apply to one on the approval to design and build facilities and parking lots and that was a bylaw that gave latitude to the owner at the time and this is criteria for design. And now the criteria obviously demands and that's changed. So you need to change the bylaw to enforce it. And you get to see some news coming through with the responses to my news, and if they go back as a bylaw person and find the bylaw unwise and it doesn't require a change, there is a bit of a problem. And the only way to change is change, which then falls to the process.
Yeah, I was just gonna speak to that. I mean, we have two great organizations being represented here as well, and then the reference around School District 63. And to that exact point about when the requirements for parking, whatever happen to be specifically, it comes to parking for a lot of the concerns we have from the residents. To that exact point about this is what was required then, and when, much like the building code as it changes, we're not requiring all of the existing buildings to change and meet the new building code requirements that sort of, quote unquote grandmothered in. And so how then do you enforce bylaws on the spectrum based on what was permitted at the time? And I think that's what you're sort of speaking to.
It is relevant and the issue because done well on the student at the time. Time is going by and one of the requirements to look at change. It's not just accessibility, it's standard, code, and code issues apply when the government put in this issue, but they were in there.
I don't want to be this big effort, but in this particular version,
Yeah.
the area didn't have accessible parking to what was the code when the building was built. They since removed that from it and have not put it back to what the code was.
And so have staff acknowledged that you're correct and that.
Yes. Yes.
So
They've acknowledged that nothing's been done to about them.
I think what might have been helpful here, from a managerial staff point of view, is staff get used to at least providing the citizen with some sort of time frame. Because it's going to save them time in the long run, not to be nagged for.
Yeah.
Even if it's order of magnitude time frame, like this might take a year. I think it's going to happen next month, and then at least you can put to rest for a little while. But something you've got in
You get tired of you get tired of it also.
If, I mean, I can't specifically comment on that because I don't know exactly what the complaint was and what the bylaw officer said, but that's more of an operational procedure. If that's what it is, it's not policy related, something that needs to be changed. So this is more an administrative, operational thing. And like anywhere else, if you're not satisfied, you go to the municipality and talk to the administration of the CAO who's responsible. But, things like this may happen. We've talked to them 3 or 4 times. But again, we have one bylaw enforcement officer. So, and there's a lot of other, I don't know personally what the situation is, but that's more of an operational. And yes, it would probably be better to provide a timeline, but again, I don't know the specifics. So, but I can definitely look into it for you.
Yeah, so I would say I agree it's an operational thing, but at some point, I think it becomes more, it could become a council thing, because if there are things that aren't getting done, the council thinks is important, and it's because of there's not enough money in the budget, or there's not enough bylaw officers, then it warrants some discussion about, okay, it takes a year for something to happen. Why is that? And so this council then needs to say, okay, is this important enough for us that we need to increase the budget to allow for another bylaw officer? Or do we want to have a service standard that says, have a policy that where we have a service standard that accessibility things are dealt with in a certain manner? I'm not sure, but I think at some point, we can't say to people, you just have to keep complaining. At some point, I think when it goes by a certain point, And, you know, and that's the case whatever, you know, you go to the first line supervisor, or whether it's municipality or somewhere else. And if you don't get what you're looking for, it, you know, it sort of gets escalated. But if staff are able to kind of engage with it, maybe is a first step.
Sure, and just to sort of try to put a button on this, is back to the comment about the correspondence and how that's sort of reflect. I think it's fair, especially while we're still in the infancy, truly of this, you know, entity, to get sort of a high level of sort of to see the trends, and then from there, maybe that might be at the point where SPAAC can make a recommendation back to council about certain items specifically.
Yeah.
I don't think that we want to get too into the weeds about dealing with a specific item,
Yeah.
but more about the larger
Blanket.
vision
Yeah.
of what we see sort of collectively happen.
Yeah.
In our communities. And obviously,
So in general terms then, Sandy, we're getting the public feedback from Central Saanich. We're getting trends or individual feedback from the other municipalities as well. Through to this committee.
For public feedback, I believe this is to bring forward any submission submitted from the public through the accessible feedback form that we're required to have. And this is going to be presented, this is how, now, this is the thing with the municipalities involved in the committee, we're not always on the same page with respect to how the referrals are dealt with. But we certainly get them, it's staff to reply, we reply, and we send them to the committee so the committee can see what are the concerns out there from the people. So that's the purpose of that there. With regards to, you know, what's being done specifically for that person, that's dealt with through the necessary channels, engineering, bylaw.
Well, we wouldn't care about that. I just saw Central Saanich was here, so I wondered what the others were doing if they're just sort of any.
No, we just didn't,
feedbacks.
for Sidney, we just haven't received any more than other than we did for last year.
And that makes me think that you're dealing with the disability awareness week. That reinforcing the website and the accessibility form is an even better idea.
Yeah.
Now come to adjournment. I would accept a motion for adjournment. All in favor? Not for the record, but this is.
Well done, Chair, well done.
Very good.